Good morning, everybody. This is Billy Trout with the Tennessee Department of Revenue Taxpayer Education section. We're glad that you're with us today to learn a little bit more about your new business and how to handle taxes with that new business. We're glad you've joined us for today's webinar. Today's webinar will be presented live, and we thank our participants for joining us online for that. For those of you that are listening or viewing this webinar via recording, we thank you for your participation as well and hope you enjoy the information as we go along. Again, we're here to give you information through the day. We've got several folks lined up to present some information for you, but we do want to remind you of a few things as we get going, and we appreciate your attention to this important information. We do want you to mute your telephone or your computer microphone throughout the day. It's very helpful to us to avoid background information. There's a lot of noise, obviously, in our busy offices or wherever you're calling in from, so we appreciate your attention to that as well. If you do need to ask any of the speakers a question, we do want you to call in to the 800 number that's listed on the screen. Of course, if you're listening or viewing this via webinar or recording, this would not apply to you, obviously. You can type a tax question if you would like into the chat box. We'll try to respond, but we do want to hold most of the questions through the day for the speakers at the end of each of their presentations. Okay. And again, in red, as it says on the screen here, we cannot discuss your private information here. If you've got questions regarding your specific business or account related matters, we obviously cannot speak about that because of disclosure laws. We do not want to violate those laws. Okay, so we want to protect your private information. Okay, hope that covers everything pretty well. Let's introduce today's speakers. Myself, Billy Trout. I'm going to be moderating today and talking about business tax in just a few moments and licensing as well. Our first presenter here in just a moment is Ephraim Simmons. He is a supervisor in the Memphis Regional Office, and he'll be covering tax registration, which is a very important part of getting started here as you begin your new business. Okay. Next up will be Michelle Sims. She's a supervisor in our taxpayer education section to talk about sales and use tax. And finally, we'll have Alicia Barrett, who's our training officer in taxpayer services, to talk about electronic filing and payments. We'll also entertain questions about other Tennessee taxes that we're not officially presenting information, but we'll do that at the end for those of you that might be interested in that, and we appreciate your attention. Okay? All right. With that being said, we just want to remind you too that the information is an overview today. Okay, so in other words, we would not be able to cover every nuance of all these questions relating to the specific taxes at hand. But if you do need help, we want you to call us at the phone number or visit us for more information on our website at www.tn.gov/revenue. We have a lot of information. Always glad to help you guys out. And we'll go ahead and get started on the presentations today and go ahead and get our first presenter in line here, which is Ephraim Simmons. And Ephraim, we appreciate you being online with us today from Memphis, Tennessee. And Ephraim will be discussing registering a new business. Thank you very much, Ephraim.
glad that you're funded. It's totally free. It's called the Tennessee Small Business Development Center. They have networks all over the state of Tennessee, mostly in the community colleges. The regional office. You can go to so you do business in Tennessee. That may require you to register with the Tennessee Department of Revenue. Also, there are other things that require you to register with Tennessee Department of Revenue. When we go to these different structures, we will talk about those in general. Now, basically, when you decide to register, if anything but a sole proprietorship in the general partnership is required to register with the Secretary of State. Also, if you want to make your general partnership legitimate, you can register that also under the Revised Uniform Partnership Act, or RUPA, with the Secretary of State. That does just give you official clarification that you are a general partnership in the state of Tennessee. But other than that, if you need an FEIN number or EIN number, you need to go to the Internal Revenue Service. Now, the Tennessee Department of Revenue, what we usually register people for initially are sales tax, franchise and excise taxes, or liquor by the drink accounts. There are other taxes that we register business owners for, but those are the primary ones that you will have to come to us initially for. And when you obtain your initial business license, you go to the county clerk to do that. Now, the thing that we concerned about is called nexus. What is nexus, somebody may ask? We look at people who have systematic and continuous business activity in the state of Tennessee, meaning that if you're always doing business in Tennessee, you may be required to register with the Tennessee Department of Revenue. On the next slide, I like to tell people about the 3 Ps. I call it productivity, property, and payroll. But right line presence deals with the total receipts, or what I call productivity. If you make over $500,000 in the state of Tennessee, or 25% of your revenue is generated in Tennessee, you are required to register. If you have real property or tangible personal property that's over $50,000, or 25% of all the property you have everywhere, you are required to file and register in Tennessee. If your compensation, whether you're doing it through wages, salaries, commission, or draws, is over $50,000, or 25% of the compensation that you pay everywhere, you are required again to register in the state of Tennessee. Now, the other question is when to register. Now, we want you to register no more than 3 months before you open. That's very important because you don't want to start registering with us and then get these tax returns you're responsible for, but you're not in business. So no more than 3 months before you open, or before the first tax return is due. Now, for a business license, it's within 30 days of getting started. That's if you have over $10,000 or more. If it's under $10,000, you probably need to get a minimal activity license. That's what Billy is going to talk about on his presentation, so that you can register your business. Now, how to register? The best way to register with the Department of Revenue is online. Now, on this particular slide, we have 2 places to register, whether it's through our new 10-tap system or do something just on our old system. But online is the best way to handle your registration. It is fast, it is secure, and it takes 1 to 10 days. Now, if you need to, you can come to one of our regional offices or in Nashville to register too in person, or you can do it by fax and mail. But that's only if necessary because it's hard to track those particular items. Now, we're going to talk about registration per structure. Now, if you are a sole proprietorship, a marriage joint partnership, or a general partnership, we will need your Social Security number on some form of taxation. Also, the major forms of taxation for that particular registration is for sales tax and business tax. Now, if you are a general partnership, we will require that you have a FEIN number. The other forms is limited partnerships, corporations, limited liability companies, and any other thing that's chartered through the Secretary of State. For those particular structures, you will need to have a FEIN number. Primarily people who have those charters through the state, they primarily must have franchise and excise tax. A lot of times, depends whether you're exempt or not, you have business tax. And depends on whether you're selling things or importing things into Tennessee, you will have sales and use tax. Now, there are two forms of legislation that gives us permission to have your EIN number. One is through the U.S. Code, and one is through the Tennessee Code annotated. In your participants guide, it really spells out the exact language that gives us the permission to have that information, but we are entitled by law to have that information. And also, we have a revenue rule. For those who do not know law, if you do legislation, then the person who gives the body the ability to enact the law, they allow them to have rules. And one of the rules that the Tennessee Department of Revenue has to enforce sales taxes and other church taxes is we have to have your Social Security number. It's very important because people collect what we call trust taxes. And if you are collecting a trust tax, which is money that belongs to the state, it is not your money. And if you misappropriate those funds, the Tennessee Department of Revenue has the right and the ability to collect those funds. Because we collect your Social Security number, under state law, we are required to protect your information. Therefore, we do not give your information out over the phone. We do not give your information out over in writing. We put up your information. It's not hanging around our desk. And it's under Tennessee Code annotated. So we must protect your Social Security number. The thing you need to understand, after you register your business, you must file all returns promptly. Whether we ask you to do that electronically or in writing or in paper, you must file those returns promptly. If you do not, you will be subject to interest and penalties. Okay, you need to keep copies of all your returns. It is your responsibility to keep copies of your returns. We do have a facility in the state government that will give you copies of your returns for a charge, but you need to keep copies of your returns. You need to maintain your records. If you're under audit, it is your responsibility to have the records to prove what you have put in place and recorded on tax returns. So you must maintain your records. Now, an important thing that people do not do is when you make any type of changes to your business, as far as you move, your email address changes, your, let's just say you change ownerships, you must notify every state or local agency of what you have done. That's very important because a lot of times people have closed the doors, but they're still liable for taxes because we don't know that they're quitting business. Usually when you close or quit your business, you have to file certain paperwork and pay certain fees to close out. So it's very important that you do that. And then you are responsible to keep up with any and every tax law that changes. Now, we're going to do certain things for you. We're going to send you correspondence when the law changes. A lot of times people do not open up the mail from the Department of Revenue. If you do not open up the mail, you do not know that the sales tax went up or sales tax went down, that is your problem. But we try our best to keep you informed of all the tax changes. Do I have any questions about registration at this time?
Folks, this is your chance to ask Ephraim a question regarding registration.
An excellent question. You can Xerox your tax returns. Sometimes you can save your tax returns by a PDF file, but it's very important that you probably keep those particular files in a safe or on a secure place, safe deposit box, in case your primary place, something happens like a fire or anything like that. Yeah, we take all forms of payment. We do take checks and credit card payments, so you can pay your taxes with checks or credit cards. I don't know what Mr. Patel is asking about Baskin-Robbins. Now, it depends on replacing your FEIN number. One thing that you have to understand is on some of the trust taxes, we do require the individual information from the taxpayer to know who's responsible. So if XYZ Corporation is collecting liquor by the drink taxes, we're not going to let that go. We need to know who in XYZ is responsible for these trust taxes. Any more questions?
I think we do have one participant typing right now, so we'll wait for them to key in their message, Ephraim.
I see that Susan is typing. I'm still waiting for her question to come through.
Let's repeat that question, Ephraim, for those that might not be able to do that.
Now, I'm believing that Susan's asking about holding on to her name, or registering her name. Now, to reserve your name, you need to go to the Secretary of State. Having a business license does not protect your name in the state of Tennessee. It has to be registered or chartered through the Secretary of State. And if you mail something to us, hopefully we would get it processed within 10 days. But again, it's hard to understand how that works with us, meaning that when you send something through the mail, you have to depend on the post office box, the post office to deliver the information, the postal service. Then it has to be received at our office. Then it has to be placed in the stack for processing. So it's hard to give you an exact time when that information will be processed. Okay, thank you, Susan. Are there any more questions? I don't see anybody else typing, so go to our website, www.tn.gov/revenue. We have a couple of sections on there under our website as Revenue Help or How Do I. They're very insightful and helpful for users to be able to use our website. Now I'm turning it back over to Billy.
Ephraim, thank you very much. What a good presentation. I hope you got some good information out of that, folks. And we think that that we've got a lot of people online.
Billy?
Okay, I'm sorry. I think we're back online now. Thank you. I think, as we were saying here, that we have a lot of people online that had some questions in the areas that were outside of what your topic was. So we'll ask that we keep those questions until the end. We have a lot more information to go through, and we appreciate everybody's attention to the topics at hand. We are now going to go ahead and talk about sales tax in Tennessee. We've got Michelle Sims here to talk about this, and we appreciate your attention during this. You can use the chat feature for those of you that are doing this live. Otherwise, we'll just let you verbally learn from Miss Michelle Sims. Michelle?
Sales and use tax in Tennessee. Today's objectives are going to be to define sales and use tax, understand the sales price, know your obligations as a business owner, and where to get more information about sales and use tax. The basics. Sales and use tax is the primary source of tax revenue in the state of Tennessee. Tennessee has both state and local sales and use tax rate. The state generally is 7% and the local rate is based on location. And the location rate is no more than 2.75%. Food and single articles have special sales and use tax rates. The Tennessee Department of Revenue administers both state and local taxes and use tax. Sales and use tax returns are filed to the Tennessee Department of Revenue and required online filing and payment. For some individuals who do not have access to a computer and have valid reasons can submit a request, and we, for religion or beliefs, are exempt from filing online. They will be awarded that to file non-electronically. Revenue distributes local taxes directly to the cities and counties, and these taxes are the responsibility of the seller and must be collected from the consumer.
What I think is important about that, Michelle, is that we get a lot of questions from business owners about their obligations, but the cities and the counties out there, they really depend on this revenue that we are collecting for them. So I think it's really important to know that the business owners out there play a vital part in this whole process because they're collecting what they should be collecting, but it goes for all the things that we use in Tennessee.
To support their communities.
Right, to support their communities, and it's very, very important. So we thank our business owners for doing that. Thank you.
Taxes apply to all sales, leases, and rentals of tangible personal property, included but not limited to computer software, certain digital products, warranty or maintenance contracts. Other items subject to sales and use tax include charges for furnishing certain services, certain amusements, recreation, and entertainment. Sales price. Sales purchase price is the amount that is subject to tax without deduction or separate itemization. Examples include property sold, materials used, labor services, income and freight, taxes imposed on the seller, services necessary to complete the sale, delivery charges, and installation charges.
So if somebody comes to my house, Michelle, and they fix my dishwasher, am I just going to pay tax on the parts, or am I going to pay on everything? No, you're going to pay on everything. Absolutely. Because your labor is part of that, and you do have to pay tax on that. Okay, and it could depend on how you're invoiced as well. So at any rate, the sales tax applies mostly on the items, tangible personal property, but these things that you see on your screen right here are part of what could be included in sales price.
Sales purchase price does not include discounts or coupons not reimbursed by a third party, separately itemized interest, financing, or carrying charges, separately itemized taxes legally imposed on the consumer, and separately itemized credit for used taken in trade. Same as sales tax, rates are equal to the sales rate on both the state and local level. A user or business will be liable for use tax if the sales tax was not paid to the dealer, inventory items that were purchased with a blanket certificate of resale are withdrawn for business or personal use, or purchases made over the internet or through catalogs were not charged sales tax. Amazon used to be a company where sales and use tax wouldn't charge, and consumers were receiving bills in the mail to pay the sales and use tax. However, Amazon now currently bills the sales and use tax based on the local.
Right. So we get a lot of questions in our call center about businesses that bring in items from outside Tennessee that they have bought so that they want to, use them for their business. And that, Michelle, would those be subject to use tax?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes, they would. Okay, great. All right. Thank you very much.
Seller of tangible personal property whose gross sales will exceed $4,800 per year are required to register for sales and use tax. One of the questions that we get is some individuals that want to register for sales and use tax, they mark no to this question. So when you mark no when you're completing the registration form, it will not approve a sales and use tax your application to get a resale certificate. And that's one of the questions that we get a lot on our through revenue help. So if this is something that you're wanting, and sometimes when you have a business you don't know and you may be wanting to get established for inventory, so I mean if you need this, you can mark yes and then just see how you are following. And if you are not following where you're exceeding this, then you can file a final return and close that. Service provider whose taxable services exceed $1,200 per year. If you have suppliers that do not collect Tennessee state sales and use tax for tangible personal property, computer software, or taxable services you receive. If you collect Tennessee sales tax in any manner, even if you do not meet the above criteria, must register for sales and use tax.
Right, and we do have some people, some businesses that are located outside Tennessee that choose to collect Tennessee sales tax. A good example of that is auto dealers that are near our state lines. Many of them will collect Tennessee sales tax as a convenience for those people who live in Tennessee, because remember, when you bring that vehicle into Tennessee, you are subject to use tax. So one way or the other, you would be paying tax on that. And that's an important thing to know too. And to go back on something that Michelle had said just a moment ago about the people whose gross sales exceed $4,800 per year, sometimes we get people that just want to register with us to get a sales tax number because they think they might be going into business. Going back also to what Ephraim had said earlier, it's very important as a new or a potential new business owner that you understand what you're doing, okay? So in other words, when you register or you get a resale certificate or you're signed up to collect our taxes, then you have an obligation. And when you have an obligation, it's a very, very important thing to know that we're going to have your sales tax return filed every month, payment as necessary, as you can imagine. But certainly you can't just say, well, I don't have any sales, so I don't have anything to report. Well, you must report something to us every month. Our old saying around here is that our crystal ball is broken. We don't know that you're not selling stuff. You have to let us know that on a monthly basis, okay? So that's very important.
Yes, and even if it's a zero return and you had no sales, you still need to file a zero return. It's due on the 20th of every month. Late will be a $15 penalty.
Right, and you don't want to pay extra money for no reason. So please make sure you understand your obligation.
A resale certificate is issued when a business registers with the Tennessee Department of Revenue for the collection of sales and use taxes. The certificate allows your business to buy items exempt from sales that you intend to resell. This certificate is not used for any purchases that are not going to be resold. So you can't buy a computer for your work area. You would have to pay sales and use tax. You wouldn't be able to use your resale certificate. And the certificate is not to be shared with others to make purchases. So you can't give it to your kids or anyone to use to buy stuff for themselves. It's just for that business.
That's important too, because so many people just think, well, I've got a resale certificate and I'm going to use it and just go down here to a large wholesale club or something like that and just go buy whatever I want. And you really can't do that. I know we've heard of a lot of people getting in trouble for misusing their resale certificate.
Yes.
And you do have to also buy your items with funds from the business. So in other words, it needs to be on a credit card, debit card, or some sort of check that's a company check. Otherwise, if you are audited, you won't be able to prove that that was a valid purchase for resale.
That is correct. So if you own a restaurant and you're buying dog food with your resale certificate, that would be a red flag for audit.
That's a good point. That's an excellent point.
Exemptions. Certain sales are exempt from Tennessee sales and use tax. They are reported on the form but exempted on Schedule A. Sales to resellers, interstate commerce, repossessions, trade-ins, cash discounts, gasoline sales, SNAP, government assistance benefits, return merchandise previously reported.
Right, and you do have to report it on the form, right, Michelle?
That is correct.
Up front, but you
Yes.
have to take it back off on Schedule A. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, very important.
Other tax exempt sales are vendor resale, when a certificate of resale has been obtained by the dealer from the purchaser, agriculture exemption, and these are sales when agriculture certificate of exemption has been obtained from the purchaser, sales to nonprofit organization presenting either a Tennessee exemption certificate or, if out of state, a copy of their IRS 501c3 exemption letter, and government sales to federal agencies, the state of Tennessee, counties, or cities.
Right, and we were talking about certificates before. You know, the resale certificate, the agricultural exemption certificate, the nonprofits. You know, we'll have that information. One key thing, the bottom about governments, there's just a blank form that governments use. They don't have an official certificate. Okay, so if you ever see one of those, you'll know what it looks like. So, and anyway, if they're paying with government funds, then you'll be able to recognize very quickly that they're exempt by the presentation of that certificate that they will just be handwritten in all likelihood on our actual form.
So your obligation as a business owner, what are you required? What is your requirements? You should maintain documentation for exemptions. You should have proper documentation to support any reported sale figures. File your returns electronically whether or not sales were made, and promptly close sales and use tax return after closing your business. So you should make sure to check that box marked final, closing your business.
So if someone presents a certificate of resale to a vendor, they do need to keep a copy of that in their files.
Yes, that is correct. Documentation should be kept at least 3 years.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So miscellaneous issues. Sales and use tax on food. So what is food? Food is defined as substances, whether in liquid, concentrated, solid, frozen, or dehydrated form that are sold for ingestion or chewing by humans and are consumed for their taste or nutritional value.
Can you repeat that? No, I'm just kidding. That's a very technical definition, but we get that question occasionally about what is food, and you see the definition there. There's more intricacy in the actual state law, but generally the grocery stores certainly know what food is and what it's not. You can look at some other information here that Michelle will talk about in just a moment.
The tax rate on food and food ingredients is currently 5%, state rate plus the local rate. On July 1st of 2017, this rate will change to 4% for state rate plus the local tax rate. Prepared food, dietary supplements, candy, and alcoholic beverages and tobacco are subject to the general state tax rate of 7% plus the local rate. So if you go into Walmart and you buy a salad or some chicken that they're cooking in their deli department, you're going to pay 7%.
Okay, thank you very much. There is a difference there, so just keep that in mind. I'm not sure how many of you are going to be selling food items, but the one thing there about the 4% state rate on food, that is part of the Improve Act that was just passed by the Tennessee legislature and signed by the governor. So the sales tax rate on food does go down beginning in July of 2017.
Contractors. Contractors are considered the user and consumer of materials used in performance of a contract. So typically when they're buying products to build a house, they pay the sales and use tax to Lowe's or wherever they get their product from. They cannot use a resale certificate when purchasing materials for a project. And generally, they're responsible for tax on the cost price of materials, labor performed on realty that is not subject to tax, and generally remain liable for the tax when the contractee is otherwise tax exempt. So if you have someone that's tax exempt, they cannot use that exemption to buy material to build their house. Sales and use tax still has to be paid by the contractor.
That's right. Contractors basically in Tennessee, they're paying sales tax when they buy these items. It's very simple. Except for maybe a couple of small exemptions that we're not going to talk about here for the purposes of this discussion, but that's mostly the way it works for contractors in Tennessee in sales tax.
Retail Accountability Program, or RAP. It ensures that sales tax collected by retailers is submitted to the state of Tennessee. The Department of Revenue monitors and audits sales tax collected and remitted on the following items: beer, tobacco, and grocery items. Wholesalers and distributors must report these type of items sold to convenience stores on a monthly basis. Sales and use tax State of Tennessee annual sales tax holiday is held every year beginning on the last Friday in July and ends the following Sunday night. Exempt items include clothing 100 or less, school supplies 100 or less, school art supplies 100 or less, and computers 15 or less. So if your kids want some Jordans that are 200
or less,
they're not going to be tax exempt.
There you go. We get some questions every summer about the sales tax holiday, so we ask that you go to our website whenever this comes up if you have questions about these items. One thing that's kind of interesting is that the legislature changed the law last year. It used to be the first weekend in August, and then the legislature decided to move that to the last weekend in July, basically, or it starts with actually the last Friday in July. So that is something that we recognize that was probably an issue for some people, but certainly it's out there. And these items that you see, they're tax-free for everybody. So you don't have to be a child going to school to have your clothing items exempt that are $100 or less there as well.
But it does have to be like personal computers, doesn't it? It can't be computers for businesses.
That's correct. That's right. That's exactly right. Mr. Hopper online has asked a question. We'll go ahead and address this. It says, we are still 3+ months out from opening, but when I register, I will need a blanket certificate. I'm sorry, I've missed blanket certificate of resale. Sorry, give me just a moment here. At any rate, the registration itself, you're asking us, would you apply separately for the certificate? No, you would not apply separately for the certificate. Your registration, when we get that in, we will actually be assigning the resale certificate at the same time we would do the registration certificate. That's a great question, and thank you for doing that.
And a lot of businesses obtain that certificate early so they can buy inventory for their store, whatever they're selling to the consumer.
Right, right. And one other thing too, businesses sometimes they have good plans. They've got this thing where they're going to register for all their taxes and be prepared and all this stuff. Maybe at the last minute something happens, maybe financing, maybe there's a problem or whatever. That's okay. Just let us know. We'll close down all of your registration stuff so that you aren't billed for things later on. So you don't want to actually cause yourself a problem by ignoring that. Okay, so that's a key piece of information as well.
And it is important to note that if you are applying early so you can buy your inventory, that you are responsible to file from the effective date on the certificate of registration.
Even if it's
Yeah.
0 and your business doesn't start for another month and you're building inventory, just make sure if it's 0, you still file that 0 return on time to avoid a 0 return with a $15 penalty.
That's correct. Once you say you're in business, we believe you, and we've got you to where we actually need you to be filing these forms. That's
Billy,
yes, effort.
yes, did you see the question that Leanne had?
If
Said
selling,
that selling services only, do you still file, I just lost that question. But she wants to know if you're selling services, do you still have to file sales and use?
that's a great question. It would have to be a taxable service, and most services are not subject to sales tax in Tennessee. Uh, we would not like to know what the actual service was. So, Ms. Stewart, if you could tell us what kind of service, that'd be great.
I know she's typing on the chat line, but it appeared to be a consulting service.
Okay, a consulting service, that would not be subject to sales tax in Tennessee. Digitally downloaded pictures, Amy has asked this question, are digitally downloaded pictures subject to sales tax? And I think John Harvey is on the line from our taxpayer education unit. I don't know if John, if you can hear us, if you'd like to weigh in on that, that would be great.
Okay, at this time, digital download still images that are transferred to the customer by internet or email are not subject to sales tax unless the customer is an advertising agency.
Thank you, John. That was very helpful. Amy, did that answer your question sufficiently? She is typing right now, and we'll see. All right. Are there other questions? Anything that we haven't addressed yet? Will coaching services be taxable? Mr. Marshall is asking that, and that question would be no. They would not be taxable for sales tax purposes. When we talk about business tax in a moment, we'll find out that that is different for business tax and some different rules on that. Okay, well, thank you. What we'll do now is we'll go ahead and take a little bit of a break here for everybody. That'll give us just time to take care of business there. We'll be back in 5 minutes. We'll be muting the audio during this time, so we'll see you again in just 5 minutes. Thank you very much. Okay, folks, we're back, and we'll go ahead and begin the next section. We appreciate everybody's participation today, and I'm glad that you have joined us here. Today, at this particular point, we're going to talk about business tax and licensing in Tennessee. We want to go ahead and discuss this issue because this is something we get a lot of questions on in our call center and also with our help desk feature as well. So today's objectives, we want to learn the basics of business tax in Tennessee and what this means for you. We want to understand the requirements for business licenses. And also we want you to know where to get more information about this. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. Again, we're going to be talking about this in an overview, and for specific questions, we do ask that you give us a call or give us an email, and you can see our contact information is the same as before. Okay? So how about a little bit of an overview? Back in 1971 in Tennessee, business tax began. The legislature wanted to repeal one tax that was on businesses and on their inventories back at that point. So they started this thing called business tax and business licensing back there. So these different statutes and rules that you see here began at that particular point, and of course have been changed, over the years. It is a tax on the privilege of doing business in Tennessee. So really, a lot of businesses are subject to this. We certainly want you to understand that you'll normally be getting a business license as you begin your new business. Now, we do administer what's known as a state tax. Some people still call it a county tax, okay? But it is a state tax and also the city tax, and we'll explain what the difference is between that too. It is on gross taxable sales and of tangible personal property and also services. So like we were talking about before, the sales tax itself is mostly just on tangible personal property, but business tax actually applies to the sale of tangible personal property and services. It is a tax that's paid by location. So if you had more than one location, then you would have more than one tax that's paid. And also you would need more than one license also as well from the local government. And we talked about the fact that it's a state tax and a municipality tax as well. So it is two different taxes here. The taxes are collected at the state level. Now, to get a license, a business tax license, you do have to visit the county clerk in each of our 95 counties, wherever you're at, and also the cities. The cities do have this from their city recorder's office or the equivalent thereof, so you wouldn't want to get that. And of course, unless your business is exempt from business tax, and there are some, and we'll talk about it in just a few moments, you do have to have a current business license. Okay? We have a question here from someone online. It says, I registered my business last week with the Secretary of State. However, I'm not in business yet. How soon do I need to register with the Department of Revenue? And the answer on that is just generally before you begin business, usually no earlier than 3 months, usually probably a month ahead of time would be good as well. Okay? And we'll answer some more questions at the end of the presentation as well. All right, so here's your code section about business tax here. And it talks about persons. Okay, so who's a person? Well, we're people, obviously. Humans are people, individuals, firms, partnerships. You see all these things here. Corporations, estates and trusts and things like that. They can be subject to these business taxes because depending on how a business is structured, you can be considered to be a person. All right. A person is not anybody who is a government official. Okay. You also see a couple of other examples in here about electric membership co-ops and utility districts as well. So basically, your business structure, unless you're listed under the not area there, then pretty much you are going to be able to, you're pretty much going to be subject to the business tax. Okay, so if you're out of state, you can be subject to business tax in Tennessee as well. And this goes back to some information that Ephraim had mentioned earlier about nexus or physical presence in Tennessee. If you're basically organized or you're here in Tennessee, and I think most of you online and viewing this on a recording are probably in that manner, then you are going to be subject to the business tax. If you own or use capital in Tennessee, or if you have bright line presence with receipts greater than $500,000 or 25% of your total receipts in Tennessee, your property here is greater than $50,000 or 25% by value in Tennessee, and payroll. greater than 50,000, or 25% of your compensation is paid in Tennessee. And this is similar to what Ephraim had brought up earlier, all subject to that. Contractors do have special considerations, and we'll talk about the contractors in just a moment on business tax as well, okay? So we do have the city tax as well. It's the same thing as the state tax, but if your business is located in a city that's passed a business tax ordinance, and there's approximately 220 cities across the state that have passed this ordinance, you would be subject to this tax. Now, what does that mean? It means if you have a business that's actually in a county, obviously, and a city, you could be subject to this tax twice. Okay. Now, the Attorney General years ago was asked by businesses to say, you know, this is double taxation of our businesses. Do you think that's the case? And the Attorney General came back and said, absolutely, it is the case. And that is exactly what the state legislature intended. So because of that, that's why we have to pay this business tax twice. Thankfully, you'll see in just a few moments that the rate of tax is very small. So we won't, it's not a big burden for a lot of businesses out there, but you'll see the rates in just a moment. It's a little bit different than sales tax too. Now, this municipality tax does not apply to any out-of-state taxpayers unless you happen to be an out-of-state contractor with a deemed location, okay? All right. So who's subject to this state business tax? Here we go. Tennessee retailers with $10,000 or more of sales per county. Out-of-state retailers who have activities in Tennessee and they have $10,000 of sales in any county. If you're a contractor in our state and you have $10,000 or more of sales in your home county, or greater than $50,000 in sales in any other county, and also out-of-state contractors with $10,000 of sales in any county as well, okay? So what this means is that for most of you that are having these gross sales, and by the way, gross sales is total income, all right? This is not your profit. This is your total income that we're talking about here in just a moment. We're talking about licensing and how it ties into these money amounts in just a moment as well, okay? So for this city business tax, this municipality tax, Tennessee retailers with $10,000 of sales in each city, contractors that have $10,000 of sales, you can read that there, and also the out-of-state contractors with $50,000 of sales in any municipality, okay? So that is the special rule for them because they, as we said in the earlier slide, that's their deemed location, okay? All right. So what are the taxpayer responsibilities that we have to engage ourselves in relative to the business tax? Well, just like sales tax, every taxpayer has to register for business tax. Every location has to be registered. And you can do this in two ways. You can actually register through your cities or counties, or you can actually register with the Department of Revenue on our website. Either way is okay, all right? And when you get your first license, just understand that you will have to pay a $15 fee to the county or the city when you get that license for your very first license. Your licenses that you get every year for renewal are not subject to that $15 charge, okay? Out-of-state taxpayers, they do need to register with us here at the Department of Revenue, but if you are a contractor and you have greater than $50,000 of receipts in any county or city, then you will need to get a standard business license from the county or city, so you will need to register for those accounts either with us or directly with the cities and the counties, okay? All right, licensing, just as important as the tax is the actual license itself. Now, as it says here on this slide, every business location in Tennessee, if you have taxable sales of $10,000 or more, you've got to get a standard business license from your county clerk. And also from the city recorder, if you've got this business tax ordinance in that city, which most likely will be the case. We mentioned the $15 fee and that it expires on the 15th day of the 5th month following the business's fiscal year. We're going to talk about that in just a moment and why that's very important. And it is automatically renewed, and you do need to display your business license. If you have a store, you will be displaying many different certificates in the store. If you're selling food, that would be a health score that you would have to post. And then also you would want to display your business license and make sure that you are up to date on that as well. Okay? All right. Now, a couple of years ago, the legislature passed a little bit of a change on the licensing thing and said to our very small businesses in Tennessee, if your taxable sales are more than $3,000 but less than $10,000, you can get a minimal activity license. And you can do this by location, and it's $15 every year for those licenses. So if you're a very small business, you might want to consider starting out with a minimal activity license, okay? Now, if your sales are $3,000 or less, you can get a minimal activity license or a standard license, but you don't even have to get a license at all if you're that small, okay? So that's your breakout there. You just want to make that decision. You can change from minimal activity to a standard license or back, as the case may be, on a year-to-year basis, okay? So we certainly recognize that businesses have a need to do that, but you want to make the best decision you can. People ask us all the time, which one should I choose? Which is the best for me? And the answer to that is we don't know, because it's based on what you believe your business is going to have for gross income, all right? So that's not the same for everybody. And of course, your situation may change over time. Maybe you start out small and you become very successful. Well, then you'd want to change the status on your business license at that time as well, okay? And here's some more information about how to switch the licenses, okay? You've got information here. I won't read all this to you, but these are the ways that you can go from a minimal activity license to a standard license, and then from a standard to a minimal. Basically, what you're letting us know at the local level and the state level is that there's a change being made, okay? And that's essentially the main part of what we're saying right here, okay? All right. Now, as it says here in red, these returns and these payments for business tax are required to be filed electronically. Now, we mentioned earlier that there are waivers to the electronic filing process, and we may talk more about that in another presentation here in a moment as well. But besides that, this is an online process. So you see the picture of the person filling out a tax return. Well, that's probably not going to be you, okay? You're going to do this online and make sure that we receive your payment online as well, because we would not want you to be penalized for sending in paper when you're not authorized to do so, okay? There are businesses that do run into problems with record keeping, like a fire maybe, or perhaps a death in the family or something that makes you late. If that happens to you, let us know so that we can possibly grant you a 30-day extension for one of these causes. Besides something that's, kind of traumatic like that, pretty much not going to be approved unless there's a very, very good reason. And we do have to make that approval up here for that. So let the Department of Revenue know about that, please. And of course, a final return, and this is actually in the law. It says that a final return must be filed within 15 days after you quit your business, okay? So if you decide that your business doesn't want to stay open past June, you really in July should be filing that final return online with us. If you can't do that for some reason, certainly you would want to do it by the due date of the actual return. The one thing we don't do, folks, and we keep mentioning this, but the one thing you don't do is you don't just ignore it. You must address your tax situation at all times, because when our collections folks find out that you haven't filed or paid as you were instructed, then you don't want to be subject to any enforced collection action, okay? Liens, levies, things like that. We just don't want to see any of that, because we can avoid all that up front by doing the right thing, okay? And we know that's what you guys want to do. That's why you're on this webinar today, to try to learn this information. So we appreciate that. So record keeping, another good thing to do. We need you to keep your records for at least 3 years from December 31st of the year that the return is filed, okay? Some people keep them much longer than that, and that's fine. That's no problem at all. You want to do that so that if there is an audit of some sort to your business, that you can come back and say, here's all my records, and this is why I have claimed what I needed to claim on the tax return, okay? And of course, your electronic record should be provided in a standard record format. So basically, information on spreadsheets or through accounting programs, things of that nature, that would be really helpful, okay? And we certainly appreciate the fact that you'll do that correctly, okay? Now, classifications. This gets a little bit complicated, but I'll try to streamline this for you. Basically, what we're talking about here is, let's determine what type of business you are so that we can know what rate of tax that you're subject to, okay? And the words in this top of the slide about dominant business activity mean simply that this is the main and principal source of the income that you're getting from your business, okay? So if you're selling shoes, and then you are selling some other type of thing like antiques. I'm making up something kind of crazy, but you can actually have two different classifications. So your main and principal source of your income is how you determine what classification you are. It is by location, and most of the time your different locations will be the same classification, but not always. And of course, there's 5 different classifications, and we'll talk about all this in just a second, okay? All right, here's class 1. There's actually 4 subclasses in classification 1. So, I'm sorry, there's 5 classifications. I always forget about class E, and we'll talk about that in a second. Sales of food and beer for home preparation, basically your grocery stores. A lot of them will be class 1A. Class 1B are your home improvement stores that are out there. Different folks like that are supplying hardware items and the like, okay? Class 1C would be like co-ops and other businesses that are providing the types of products that you see on screen right here too. Businesses in classification 1D, a lot of them are convenience stores, okay? They sell gasoline at retail, all right? Now, they might sell candy and drinks and things like that inside, but if you think about their dominant business activity, their main and principal source, most of the time they're going to be getting way more money on selling that gasoline than they are the candy bars and stuff. But it's up to them to make that determination, okay? And then classification 1E, it's the one I forgot, but it is the sale of gasoline and diesel fuel at wholesale, okay? There's a special rate for these people that do that. Classification 2, you can see here all the different ones that are listed in the Tennessee Code. Basically, your higher ticket items, motor vehicles, furniture stores, drug stores, and the like are all in here as well. But at the bottom, it says if you're selling any tangible personal property and there's no classification listed anywhere, then it's classification 2 is the place to go with that. All right? All right. Classification 3. We've got a lot of things in here. You can see all these things listed, but in bold in the bottom right, it says services. Okay? So if you're providing a service, if you are providing a service of, let's say, repairing that dishwasher or that refrigerator and that sort of thing. You're subject to business tax and needing a business license for providing that service. Now, you see some people that also sell tangible personal property, like if you had a candy store, a jewelry store, a tobacco store, things like that. We said earlier that if you sold tangible personal property, you were classification 2. Well, that is not actually in that classification because it's listed in classification 3. Mr. Hopper, I see your question about the classification for services businesses such as a hair salon. That would be classification 3. Okay, that's a great question, and I appreciate that. That is a service. You're providing a service. Now, if you sold more, oh, Ephraim has popped in, and I would agree with that. He says on his response, classification 3, unless you sell tangible personal products, the main and principal source, more than 50%. If you were selling a lot of shampoo and a lot of combs and a lot of stuff like that, then you could actually be classification 2. But I think 3 for most cases. All right. Thank you for that question. That's a great question. Classification 4 are your contractors. Okay. Contractors out here, people that are improving real property, providing some of these other services that you see. Also, people who run, let's say, livestock markets, things of that nature, commissions from the sales of farm products belonging to others. So that's classification 4. Classification 5 are industrial thrift loan companies. There are somewhere around 200 of these throughout the state. Not worth talking about here. I know we don't have anyone involved with that at this particular point that is probably on the call here with us anyway. Natural gas marketers are classification 5B as well. All right. Antique malls, flea markets, and special shows are handled differently, and they are administered by the local counties and cities. And we do have a business tax guide along with a sales tax guide and other tax guides on our website that are very comprehensive, and they're available for you to look at, download to your computer for free, be able to go back and reference at any time for that particular purpose. So we'll be glad to do that. All right. Exemptions and exclusions. All right. Well, for every law where it says that there is a taxable situation, it seems like there's always a group of people that are exempt. And you can see these people that are listed here. Your doctors, your lawyers, your people who are involved in education, nonprofit services, and the like. And I won't read all that to you. But in red, very important, it says that you still must pay tax on sales of tangible personal property and taxable services. Okay, so when you're actually out here and you're exempt, you're thinking, I'm just fine. I don't have any problems with that. Well, if you're selling stuff, then you might be taxable on that. Let me give you a great example. Veterinarians. Okay, veterinarians are not subject to business tax or business licensing for providing services to animals. Okay. So when you get your dog or cat vaccinated, that's not subject to business tax. But if you were a veterinarian that, let's say, sold dog food, cat food, leashes,
Vaccines.
collars, and
Or not vaccines, but like the flea treatment.
flea treatments, things of that nature, that's right. Those are all subject to business tax. And the reason that is because other stores that sell similar products like that are very taxable for business tax on those items, okay? So you might be engaged in a very non-taxable service, but you might be selling things that are actually subject to business tax. So that's a key thing to remember, okay? Now, manufacturers are exempt also. And you see the qualifications here. If their business gross receipts are derived from manufacturing over 50%, and they actually have to be selling their manufactured products from that manufacturing location, okay? So they can't have another store down the road where they sell defective products at a discount, something like that. That's not going to work, okay? So, but manufacturers do have that exemption on there, and it is by location. And key point, if you're actually a manufacturer that qualifies for the exemption, then all sales from that location are exempt. So that's a good thing. Okay? All right. There's other exemptions too. People who are visually impaired under certain rules and certain income qualifications can be exempt from business tax as well as disabled former members of our armed forces. If we, as employees, if you're an employee, thank goodness that we're not subject to business tax or business licensing, individuals. Religious and charitable institutions own donated items, okay? So if these folks are selling things that have been donated, that's great, no problem at all. If you're selling stuff at a state or a county fair under the law, you're good. You don't have to worry about that. Farmers are exempt from business tax as long as they're selling their products direct from the farm and they're sold by them as the farmer, okay? And also you've got some receipts for admissions to amusement or recreational activities that these nonprofits put out. So that's a good thing as well. So that's certainly for their advantage, and they should take advantage of that because the law says they can. Providers of direct-to-home satellite TV programming services. Now, we get this question occasionally because people think, well, what about the cable people? And, what about cable companies? Well, for whatever reason, the Tennessee legislature has not exempted cable companies from business tax, but they have actually exempted the direct-to-home satellite television programming services. It's in the law, and they are not subject to it, okay? Movie theaters, interestingly enough, are exempt from business tax, and that's everything that the movie theater takes in, the admission, the concessions, the anything. Very interesting law, but it's in the law. School bus operators, kind of something that's come up here last year, as a matter of fact. School bus operators that transport students are not subject to business tax, but if that bus owner decided they would take their bus and take a group of people to an amusement park somewhere and charge a fee for taking them to the amusement park, and they weren't necessarily students of the school, then that's very taxable, okay? They would need a business license for that sort of income. And individual property owners that use property management companies to manage their vacation lodging are exempt, okay? So, but the vacation lodging management company is going to pay the business tax, all right? Deductions. Here's some deductions that are similar to the sales tax deductions that we discussed earlier. Not exactly the same, but they do mimic that, and you can see the different ones that are included there for your consideration. Credits, personal property tax credits, okay? Those of you that have businesses or will have businesses, you may not know this, or you may know it already, that you're subject to a personal property tax on inventories and other items that are used in your business, and your property assessor's office will send you a bill for that. Well, you're allowed to take a credit on your business tax return for those taxes that have been paid, but it can't exceed 50% of the actual tax that you owe to us for that service, okay? The property must be at the location for the return. What that means is that if you have multiple locations, you can't take the personal property tax from one location and use it for another, okay? And as it says in the last bullet there, this is not real estate property tax. This is not your standard real estate taxes that many of us are used to seeing, okay? So make sure not to take that, and make sure it is the personal property tax of what your business is being assessed on, okay? Here's the tax rates, and you can see here before that there is a minimum tax that is due for most of our taxpayers out there. It is $22 a year, okay? So, on sales tax, a lot of times people who are just beginning or have a special business, sometimes they report zero on their sales tax returns. Well, when you file your business tax return each year, you'll never have a zero tax. Okay, it's always going to be at least $22. All right.
So your deductions and your credits can't make that go less than $22.
That's exactly right. Deductions and credits cannot make that bill go less than $22, no matter what it is. Okay. Interestingly enough, the classification 5A, those industrial thrift loan companies, have a minimum tax of $450 and actually a maximum tax of $1,500. So that's kind of unusual for them. So just some FYI for you there. Now, each of you will choose whether you're going to pay your taxes at the wholesale rate or a retail rate. Okay? So wholesale basically is when you are getting items and you're selling them to other businesses. Retail is when you are selling them to actual end users or customers. Okay? So most of you, I think, will be doing retail sales. And if a taxpayer's gross sales are more than 50% wholesale, then you're going to pay on the wholesale rate. And as you'll see in the chart in just a minute, you'll see very quickly that the wholesale rate is cheaper, but not every classification has a wholesale rate. Okay, we'll talk about that in just a second. Also, if the taxpayer's gross taxable sales are at least 50% retail, this is the other end of that, then you're just going to pay retail rate on all your sales. So basically, you make that choice, and you can change that every year too, depending on what you're doing. Okay? Here are the tax rates. I mentioned earlier that the rates are very small, and they are. Like for classification 1A, the food stores at the retail rate, this is 1/10 of 1%. So, think of 1%, but then just 1/10 of that 1%. So that's a very small rate of tax. Wholesaler rates there, you can see classification 4. The retailer rate is actually not listed on there properly. It's 1/10. I'm sorry, it is under the general rate, 1/10 of 1%, but they don't have retailer and wholesale rates. It's just the general rate. Okay? All right. Municipality rates, they're the same rates as the that we're seeing on here too, except that there are a few cities scattered across Tennessee that have a rate that is less than the state rate. Okay, it's not more, but it can be less, and that's the way that has been for years and years. But if a city were to start business taxes now under our law, they would have to come in at the rates that were just back on the slide right here. Okay, they would come in at those rates instead. All right. So filing periods. This is something that is really important. So pay attention very closely to this. Okay. We say here that the due date is always based on the fiscal year, which is your IRS year. This is when you file your federal taxes. Now, most of you on the webinar have a January through December tax year. Okay. So you're filing and paying your taxes January through December. So it says here that the returns are due the 15th day of the 4th month following the end of the taxpayer's fiscal year. And it's not the same as the expiration date on your license, okay? The 15th day of the 4th month is April 15th for most people, okay? So April 15th of each year is when your business taxes are due. One rule of thumb you can use is when you file your federal taxes, assuming you don't get an extension, that is, for federal taxes, then you should file your business tax to the state at the same time, okay? And of course, you do have to file electronically unless a waiver is obtained from the Department of Revenue.
Can I add something?
Yes, Michelle wants to add something. Go ahead, Michelle.
I was just going to say, even if you get an extension on your federal return, you cannot get that same extension on your business tax return. So, because I know sometimes I'll have taxpayers, they'll say, well, I have an extension on my federal until October. But if you're based on a calendar, I'm talking about based on a calendar year. Even if you get an extension based on that calendar year with the IRS until October, business tax we cannot, because it's associated with the business license. And the minimum or the maximum exemption is 30 days, and it has to be approved.
That's correct.
Great, thank you. And by the way, the voice you've heard is Alicia, who will be coming up in just a moment to talk about electronic filing as well. Okay, thank you, Michelle. That's a good point. So for mobile businesses, in-state taxpayers, basically you're going to report back to your home location, okay? And if you have a business that's taxable, has taxable receipts in another jurisdiction and you don't establish a location, you report it back to your home location. And so basically a great example of this is food trucks, okay? We have a lot of food trucks that are in Nashville and other cities around Tennessee, and they go places. They have wheels, so they're mobile, all right? So they're selling food everywhere, but they have one location usually where they're based, and they're actually have their books and records, and they're doing business out of. That is where they get their business license, okay? And if that location is inside of a city, then they're going to have a county license and a city license as well, okay? But they do not have to have licenses for all the places that they go, okay? And for out-of-state taxpayers, you can see the rule here. All out-of-state taxable receipts $10,000 or more are earned in any county or reported on a state business tax return. And of course, out-of-state taxpayers are exempt from the municipality tax. We talked about the contractors before, a little bit on that, and what their requirements are as well. Okay, let's talk a little bit more in depth about the contractors for just a second here. Again, if you have receipts of more than $50,000 in a jurisdiction, then you're going to have a license for that city or county. Here's the reason why. The legislature a number of years ago found out very quickly that a lot of our contractors actually are based in larger cities, okay? So what happens to that on the back end is that a lot of that tax money goes back to that location. Well, the contractors, if they're building commercial buildings or private businesses or just homes, you know, out in different other smaller cities and counties, they have to get these licenses out in these different cities and counties, smaller areas, so that parts of their money are being basically given back to those local communities instead of the larger communities, okay? So if you are a contractor, there's a great likelihood of you having a lot of licenses, okay? Because again, $50,000 or more in gross income, that's not profit, gross income, okay? So as you can see, you're definitely on the hook right there. And if you are an out-of-state contractor, when you do $50,000 or more than $50,000, you're treated exactly the same way as an in-state contractor, okay? All right. Well, we're at the end of the business tax presentation, so we'll open up the floor to any other questions. We thank Ms. Leanne Stewart for her question that she asked about treating federal and state separate with business planning and filing. That certainly makes sense because there are differences in the rules, and you want to be sure that you are always keyed into that sort of thing. We have another question that's being typed at this particular time by Mr. Marshall. We'll wait for that to come up. If you have any verbal questions, you're welcome to ask them on the phone at this time, just by unmuting your phone. Mr. Marshall says, will business tax be paid for rental properties, non-property management? That's a great question, Mr. Marshall. Let me give you the best answer I can. Long-term rentals of more than 90 days are not subject, I'm sorry.
It's 180.
180.
Business tax.
180 for business tax. That's right. Thank you for correcting me. I'm in the sales tax mode. Alicia pointed that out. Long-term rentals, 180 days or more, are not subject to business tax, okay? But short-term rentals are. So the difference there that I always keep in my mind is the rental of hotel rooms. that's obviously subject to business tax, but long-term rentals, like you're renting out a house, an apartment, something like that's not subject to business tax. Okay? Great question. Thank you, Mr. Marshall, for that question. Okay, well, I don't think we have any more pending questions on business tax, so we'll just jump right in to our hot topic of the day, which is electronic filing and payments. And we have Miss Alicia Barrett here, who is our training officer in taxpayer services, to talk about this. Thank you very much, Alicia.
Hello, everyone. Okay, today we're going to talk about electronic filing and payments. Okay, over the last few years, currently we're getting about 2 million in as of fiscal year 2015, we were getting over 2 million electronic returns filed. You can see that pattern. It's generally been in an upward direction since, I believe the first year is 2002. It's steadily increased. So, which taxes must be filed electronically? Using a vendor or via the department's website, sales tax, business tax, motor fuels, individual income tax, and franchise and excise tax are filed electronically. Through just our website, you can file consumer use and professional privilege tax. Using certified software vendors, it can make electronic filing easier. A lot of the people that use these are going to be like accountants or maybe large companies that's filing quite a few different locations. Certain companies have been tested and they are approved to submit tax returns and payments to revenue. A complete list is available on our website, and you've got the web address there where you can go and look for. Now, you do have to look at all of the different tax types. I would recommend franchise and excise are going to have the most amount of approved software vendors, but there are several for business tax and sales tax. So when selecting one, you're going to have to take into account what you file as far as taxes go with us, and which vendor can actually produce the most. So we have several different payment options available through our website. ACH debit is the primary one used by our taxpayers. This is just where you put your routing and your account number in. We'll pull that money out of your bank account. We also have credit card available. There's a 2.35% processing fee on a credit card. And both of these you have to have it in by 11:59 p.m. on the due date to be considered timely. Now, please don't wait till 11:59 p.m. to try and submit your payment, because just in case there's a problem with the internet, you run into some sort of difficulty, then we don't want you guys to be considered late. So please don't wait that far down to the last minute. The payments can be warehoused for up to 20 days on sales tax and up to 90 days for the other annual taxes like franchise and excise tax, business tax, and so forth.
What's warehouse mean?
Warehouse means that you can actually schedule your payment. So, like for example, you're going to file your sales tax, but maybe you're planning on going on a cruise. You're leaving out on the 15th. And so you can actually go ahead, file your tax on the 1st of the month, and schedule a payment date for the 20th. You're not having to think about anything like that on your vacation, but you don't really have to let that money go out of your bank account until the due date of the taxes.
I think there's a lot of taxpayers that don't know that, because that's why we get a lot of people that wait close to the end of their filing period, because they don't want to let loose of that money.
Exactly.
I certainly would understand that, but there's no reason for that when you can warehouse your payment. So you can go ahead and file, tell it to come out on a certain date, and then you don't have to worry about it anymore.
Exactly. So we also have another option that's ACH debit. This is for global payment systems. Now, this is a system that is primarily used. You cannot use it for any of the taxes that's available through our new 10-tab system. But you still can use it for franchise and excise, where you're making your estimated payments, and also for business tax. Now, the advantage of it is you can pay a large number of accounts, like for business tax. All of them have to be underneath the same FEIN or entity ID with one lump sum payment. And the advantage, like for your franchise and excise payments, is you can actually log into the global website and see a history of your estimated payments that's going towards that franchise and excise. Now, the timing on it is a little bit different. Payments have to be submitted by 3 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time, the business day prior to the due date. So if your taxes are due on Monday, you have to make that call or go online to the global website by 3 o'clock p.m. on the Friday before. Though you can warehouse the payments for up to 90 days before the payment due date. And like I said previously, this is just not available for taxes that are filed through our 10-tab system. You can also use ACH credit for payment. Now, this is a little bit different. What we do here is we're going to give you our banking information. You have to fill out a form. We'll send you a letter approving you for ACH credit, and it's going to include our banking information. Once again, the main advantage is you can pay a large number of accounts that's underneath the same federal ID number, social security number, with one lump sum payment. The timing is a little bit different. It has to depend on your bank's cutoff time. So basically what's going to happen is once we send you our banking information, you're going to relay that to your bank. And then on the appropriate date when you schedule the payment, that bank is going to push that money electronically over to our account. And so you do have to kind of keep it in line with their particular cutoff time. So this is what our online services page looks like now. You can see the electronic filing. You can see our 10-tab help section. That's been pretty popular here lately. There's online business tax registration. All of the different things that you can do through our online services page. When you click on electronic filing, you're going to get a list of the taxes that you can file electronically. You can see here sales and use tax, business tax, franchise and excise tax, and so on. So you do have to register and file your tax returns online. Now we've mentioned the electronic filing requirement a couple of times. The main things that you can apply and get a waiver for on this is actually, like they said before, there's religion, and then we do still, I mean, I'm assuming that it's probably not anybody on this phone or on this webinar that would have this particular limitation, but we do still have some counties out away from the main metropolitan areas that do not have internet access. We also have some taxpayers that do not have computers. Those reasons, along with religious reasons, are the main reasons that you would request a waiver to the electronic filing requirement. But for most everybody else, what they'll do is log into our website at tn.gov/revenue and click e-file and pay to register for electronic filing. Now, electronic filing is pretty flexible. You can change your passwords. You can add different users and user levels. The returns and payments will be filed electronically. You can warehouse your payment, and there's no charge for any of this. So when you go to establish a username for business tax, you're going to see a screen that looks something like this. Underneath new users, you would click create account, and you would get a screen that looks like this. Currently, the only thing that you can do through this screen is business tax. The other taxes that were available through this, they moved over to our new system a couple of months ago. So you would put a check mark next to city and county business tax. And then you would enter your email address and answer the paid provider question, yes or no, Paid providers are like accountants, CPAs, somebody that's being an independent person that's being compensated for the preparation of tax returns. This would be, if you answer that paid provider question though, this is going to be the next screen that you're going to see. The primary legal name for sole proprietors is going to be the first 4 letters of your last name. For marital joint, it's going to be the first 4 letters of the primary spouse's first name. And then for corporations, partnerships, that type of thing, it's going to be the first 4 characters of that entity's name. Now, something to keep in mind is when I'm saying characters, I do mean periods and spaces as well. When we get to the ID number on a sole proprietor, it's going to be the social security number without dashes. On a marital joint, it's going to be that primary spouse's social security number. And then for corporation, partnership, so forth, those are going to be, could be the FEIN number. And there's also some that we register underneath their Secretary of State control number. So that's another possibility as well. If you did not find your information, if you got something saying that that combination wasn't recognized, we would ask you to call our electronic commerce department, and I'll provide the contact information for them shortly. So the next page, once you get that information put in and you click next, this page is going to show up. Most of it's going to be filled out. The only thing that we ask you to fill out is an administrative contact's name and their telephone number. Now that administrative contact, that's the only person that electronic commerce is going to talk to about this username. They will not reset the password for anyone else. After you put in that information, it's going to allow you to set up the username and password. It will also allow you to select 3 security questions for yourself. This would just enable you to reset the password if at some point in time you needed to do that while the department's not open. This page is a confirmation. Now, underneath services, that's a link that takes you directly to the business tax page. If you click a continue, it's going to allow you to log into account management. And some people can find that to be like a little bit of a loop that they get into. So just make sure underneath services that you click where it says city and county business tax. So to file and pay your business taxes, you would go to https://apps.tn.gov/biztax, or you can just start on from our department's website, click on e-file and pay, click on electronic filing, business tax, and then click on business tax online filing. This is what the business tax online filing page looks like. There is, right underneath File My Business Tax Return, there's a button that says Go to Log On. You'd select that. So here's some common problems that people have with our website for electronic filing. The username and password do not match. There are links underneath the username and password where you can click that you forgot your username and just put in your email address and it will be emailed to you. Now, we are aware that there can be different reasons, like your company could get a server, you can change internet providers. There can be reasons why your email address may change. And you can call us at 615-253-0704 and they will be able to help you as far as that username goes, or 866-368-6374. You can also click Forgot Password and you can reset using your security questions. That's usually the fastest way to do it. If the wrong business tax classification is displayed when trying to file your business tax return, just call that number, 615-253-0704. They'll be more than happy to help you out with that so you'll be able to file your taxes the next day. If you cannot file for the period you requested, there are some limitations as far as this goes. Now, some people, most of you, I hope not, since you guys are being proactive enough to attend our webinar today, but there are some people that maybe forgot to file their return for 2012 or 2013, those years are no longer available to be filed electronically through our website. If that happens, you're just going to have to file a paper return. Now, if the website says that your account number is not found, once again, call the Electronic Commerce Department. They are there to help. Their number is 615-253-0704 or 866-368-6374. Settlement dates when electronically filing. Now this is when you're selecting a payment for a future date. It has to be 3 days or less before the due date. If it's 3 days or less before the due date of the return, just leave it blank. It's going to come out it may come out the day before you want it to, but it will come out pretty much, you'll find that process is between it'll come out of your bank account within 2 days of the date that you're filing the return. If it is more than 3 days before the due date, you could be entering an incorrect date or not using the correct format if you get an error there, and I would just recheck my data entry on that. So now this is the part that we are most excited about, is our new 10-tap system. 10-tap is the new filing and payment system for the Department of Revenue. Gradually, all of our taxes are going to be on it. The information that I talked about previously was for the older existing electronic filing and payment system, but 10-tap started in March of this year, and it is an excellent system for filing and paying certain taxes. Each year, we're going to move more of them to the new system, and so I believe after the April due date of our business taxes, they're going to be moved over to 10-tap next year as well. The older system is going to be going away. So 10-tap, it actually stands for the Tennessee Taxpayer Access Point. It's a free website. It offers state-of-the-art functionality. Now, you can do a lot of things with 10-tap that you could not do with the older system. You can change your address, you can claim a refund, you can do a penalty waiver, you can actually message with someone here at the department. It allows you access to your account information, and that includes a balance 24 hours a day. You can save your return and finish later. You can view correspondence that we've sent you, and just basically, like I was saying before, maintain your tax account through claiming those refunds, penalty waivers, etc. Replacing our system is going to make filing your taxes quicker, more efficient, and more streamlined. Taxes that are currently available on 10-tap are sales and use tax, consumer use tax, liquor by the drink, tobacco tax, and professional privilege tax. All of our taxes are going to move over within the next several years, and they're all going to be available to be filed electronically through 10-tap.
But for our people that have new businesses now, starting in 2017, they're going to have to file in the old system next year, and then
for business
tax, right? So the stuff you said earlier was
yes,
important to a lot of the people that were
absolutely
have on here. Okay, great.
So this is what our 10-tap login on page looks like. Over on the right hand side, you'll see where you can log in, put in your username and password. Just like with our older system, there is some place where you can click that you forgot your username or your password. Directly under that is the link where you can create the logon if you don't have it. But there's also a lot of different information over on the left hand side of the screen. Under request on the left side, you can look up information and request. You can actually retrieve saved information. Underneath the non-logon services, there currently right now you can file sales and use tax, consumer use tax, you can register a new business, do professional privilege tax, and we also have a link where you can just make a payment. So when you go to create a 10-tap login, here's the thing. You can do a lot more to your account through 10-tap than you could ever do through the older system. So it is a lot more secure. We are going to ask you for the legal name, social security number, or FEIN. We're going to ask you for the account type, account ID, and zip code you're trying to create that logon for. And we're going to ask you for the most recent payment amount or a 10-tap letter ID. And you can find that letter ID on recent correspondence on one of the taxes in 10-tap on the upper right, in the upper right section of that letter. When you first log on, you can click My Profile, and you can see quite a few different things that you can do. You can manage payments, you'll see alerts, you can also manage logons. Additional logons can be established, so if you have people working underneath you, maybe you've got one person that prepares your return, someone else that does your payments, or you've got an independent CPA and you're wanting him to have access or her to have access to file the returns and payments, but you don't necessarily want them doing things such as maybe doing maybe changing your address or that type of thing, or allowing other people access to your account. So when you look at this at the taxpayer level on 10-tap, you can see underneath in the main section, you can see a listing of the different types of accounts that you may have underneath this. You can also see a section for alerts. This notifies you, is there correspondence that you haven't seen? Is there a balance that needs to be paid? A return that needs to be filed? Things that need your attention. Anything that needs your attention is going to have an orange triangle next to it. Now, I see that Mr. Hopper submitted a question. For business tax, you would be using the electronic filing system that I outlined at the beginning of the call. Now, for your sales tax, that's not going to be available through that system any longer. So you're basically going to have to create a username and password for each system. Now, that being said, that username and password, you can use the same one as long as the criteria for both systems are met. And that password, 10-tap requires upper and lowercase letters to be in your password. And I believe the older system also requires a special character. In addition, it does not require uppercase letters, but it does require, I believe, letters, numbers, and special characters. So
Right. So Mr. Hopper, he's got to register
for
in both places.
Yes.
He'll be doing 10-tap for sales tax, but his franchise and excise and business tax will be over in the old system.
Absolutely. Now, over on the right-hand side, you can register a new location. You can click that you want to manage accounts. You want to gain access to another tax account. And you also want to make a payment. Or if you want to just message with us, you can also do other. You can also do the additional services, which I don't believe is pictured on the screen.
Billy or Alicia, with 10-tap for business, for anyone that's filing business tax, they would only file it one more time before it moves over. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So anyone that had a file this year would only have to file in the previous system one time.
One more time.
One more time.
Yes, and that includes franchise and excise as well as business tax too. So when we click on one of the accounts on the screen, it takes us into the liquor. In this case, it takes us into the screenshot for the liquor by the drink. And it allows us over on the right hand side, we can click petition for penalty waiver, we can click claim a refund, and you see all those little orange triangles again that's calling our attention to periods that need something done to them, whether it's a payment or a return. Here we're inside the period for March of 2017. And over on the right hand side, our I want to has changed again. Here we can either make a return, file or amend a return, or make a payment. It also gives us the balance for the period. And this is also where we would go. We would click on the return or the schedule over there on the bottom section to the right if we needed to print out a copy of our return. Because the good news about TinTap is that it does save your filings. Now, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have printed a copy for your records, but you do have that. Those are always going to be accessible to you on TinTap. So when Mr. Hopper's asked, when will business tax and F&E taxes move to TinTap? We are projecting that that's going to happen, I believe, in June, around the summer of next year.
Right, May to June next year. We're still in planning phases for that, but we're really looking forward to it. It will be very good to have all these taxes over on the TinTap system,
Yes.
So you can look at everything. And most of the taxes in Tennessee will be done next year. There will be others over a period of 2 or 3 more years that will be moved over, but most of which will be, the bulk of them will come over next year.
I think the major tax types will all be over in TinTap by once we do the next move.
Yes, I think that's correct.
So we have regional offices around the state: Johnson City, Knoxville, Chattanooga, Memphis, and Jackson, that are there to offer e-filing assistance and registration assistance. Passwords can be reset by email or by answering security questions. And the last thing that I've got here is, for more information, you can visit our website at tn.gov/revenue. We also have a specific TinTap website, www.tintapinfo.com. And we do have our electronic filing number that I've mentioned several times, 866-368-6374, or those in the Nashville area at 615-253-0704. Anyone at the department in taxpayer services can answer questions about TinTap. So our call center, 615-253-0600 or 1-800-342-1003. Now, I don't know that if we've got any people that will be doing motor fuel tax, but if we do, they do have a specialized e-filing department that works with them, and their number is 615-532-6124. Did I have any more questions regarding electronic filings? You can unmute your phone, of course, and answer it or ask verbally, or of course you're welcome to type your questions in as well.
Yes, we welcome any questions on any of our topics, even stuff we have not covered. You'll notice coming up on your screen there, we've got some feedback that we'd like you to give us about how we've done today. We appreciate the opportunity to reach out to you on this webinar. It's a good tool for us to communicate with you as new business owners, and we really want you to understand your obligations, but we want you to understand also that we're here to help you, and we really want you to take advantage of what's available not only on this webinar but also on our website, our staff that's in our call center each and every business day, our folks that answer help desk tickets online. We're certainly glad to be there to help you in any particular way. We're waiting for a couple of other people to type in some questions now, so we'll go ahead and let that pop up. And we thank you for your participation.
Just to elaborate on TinTap, once you are able to sign into TinTap, you'll see the difference between our previous system and TinTap. With TinTap, it allows you to see if you have any credits, debit.
But certainly, thank you again very, very much for all of your participation today. On behalf of our staff in taxpayer education, Ephraim Simmons from our Memphis Regional Office and the Tennessee Department of Revenue. Thanks for joining us, and we hope everybody has a really great day. Thank you very much.